Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com runs down the major markets. Is anybody making money in this earnings season? Markets in China have taken a hit. Ross also comments on gold. The founder of Armstrong Economics, Martin Armstrong, gives us an extensive interview where he answers questions about the long-term outlook for gold, what the difference is between now and the recession that hit back in the 80s, what his vision is for the U.S. dollar, whether cash can survive, and the growing separatist sentiment in North America. Plus, at the end of the show, we'll have a company showcase update from American Manganese President Larry Reaugh. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com, where you'll find insightful market commentary and timely technical analysis. You can also find him on Twitter at ChartsByRoss. Welcome back to the show, Ross, and happy birthday.
Good to be with you, Jim.
Ross, we're into earnings season. Is anybody making money out there?
Well, some are making money. The Netflixes of this world are making money, but how many more people are there who will take out a subscription to Netflix? So how much more growth could there be? But those who are trading would be, some of the U.S. money center banks. They seem to be doing all right on their trading accounts. They're not doing too well on their investment ones in terms of helping out the members of the general public, but they're doing well for themselves. Regional banks are doing not too badly. But some of these things have just been racing along as far as technology is concerned. We take a look at that NASDAQ 100, and the index finally ends up with a down week here. These stocks that have been just leading along so much, we started to see some upside exhaustion. So that's, taking a look at things like relative strength indexes. They are up to absolute extremes on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And so, it doesn't take much to take the wind out of this market. And specifically, we saw, this week, outside reversal weeks and things like Shopify made a new high for the week and then reversed lower. You've got China, mainland China, the Shanghai market, big reversal there, and the A shares, which trade in New York, the ASHR, big island reversal. We had about 10 days trading up around over 34 on the index. And remember, this was at 24 back in March, so pretty big run. And on Thursday, big gap down, so we've got exhaustion signals at the top, island reversal, and it looks as though there's pretty good correction going to happen over there in China. Some of the individual stocks here in New York, Amazon, Zoom, we've got exhaustion signals there on both the daily and weekly charts, and so they're susceptible for some pretty big corrections. And one of the ones that's really participated in this rally has been Clorox, and it's now, and this has been a big winner since '09. I mean, this stock's gone from $45 to $230 in a span of 11 years. So really good. Had a big run ever since CODIV kicked in, but we've now got what I call a trifecta. That's when we have daily, weekly, and monthly charts into overextended categories. So probability there of a big correction looks pretty darn good. I think if you look at it maybe a month, 2 months from now, it might have had a big enough correction that it could be time to step in, because it does have a nice long-term uptrend.
What's going on with gold?
We've been working on a model here that's just been pretty much on track. The gold market bottomed back in the middle of March the 19th, around 1460. And a month later, April the 20th, we saw the bottom in oil. And if you recall, that's when we had that negative number, minus $40 for that one day on oil. And historically, we go back all the way to the 1970s in terms of looking at research on these things. When you have a low in the gold market, and within the next month, oil puts in a significant low, the gold market and the oil then tend to both bounce well out of that. However, the gold market ends up with a cap on the price very soon after the bottom. Usually, and that cap in this case, we got up to, I guess about a month, not even that much later, probably about 3 weeks off the bottom. And that lid, we look at it historically, for the next 3 months, the probability of moving through that high by more than 1.5%, actually by 1.6%, is very, very small. As a matter of fact, if we go back, we got 17 examples, and there's only 7 times that we actually ended up breaking out, but it was always after 3 months of consolidation. The reason I bring that up this weekend is that it's now 3 months since the consolidation period started, and that high on the first rally out of the bottom into April was 1788 on gold. 1.6% above that was a target of 1817 for resistance, and that's exactly where the nearest futures contracts have been finding difficulty here for this last 7 or 8 trading days. If we can close through here, the 5 examples that have done that have then gone on to progressively have a pretty good move on the upside. 2 of them had a small pause on the way. 3 of them just took off really, really well. So we're getting to the latter part of July, and if this thing wants to move, I think it's got to move fairly quickly. And our upside target hasn't changed. Initial target up at 1888. I think you'd probably get a pause there. Longer term, no question that numbers well into the 2000s are probably in the cards.
Ross, thank you so much.
Good to be with you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com. You can find him on Twitter at chartsbyross. If you have any questions for Ross, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Coming up, Martin Armstrong, next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
My guest is Martin Armstrong, founder of Armstrong Economics, available online at armstrongeconomics.com. He's speaking to us from Florida. Martin, welcome back to This Week in Money.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
How is your new book doing, Manipulating the World Economy, the Rise of Modern Monetary Theory, and the Inevitable Fall of Classic Economics? Is there an alternative?
Well, it keeps selling out all the time. I guess we finally got it back on Amazon just a few days ago. So it's in the 3rd edition already, and I was really surprised at how the quantity of people that are just buying it around the world and handing it out to people, I guess, to try and influence them. We even had one group that wanted to buy over 200 of them to send them to every member of a parliament. So,
which parliament?
It's been interesting.
Which parliament?
A number, I mean, even including your country. I mean, a lot of them.
Well, they certainly could use it.
Well, I think it's primarily showing that Keynesian economics has completely failed. And, I mean, we're trapped in this position now where, it's been this idea that, the quantity of money, if you increase the quantity of money, it will create inflation. Well, they've been doing it for 6 years since negative interest rates in 2014. It's completely failed because they don't understand that a lot of it is also simply if people are hoarding versus spending, and that's really what's happening. If they don't trust the future, they hoard money. When they no longer trust the government, which is, I believe, where we're eventually going to go, then they spend the money. Then they don't want to hoard it. So that becomes what people call often the hyperinflation. But it's a question of confidence and who do you trust? And, I think all these lockdowns and things of this nature that are starting. So you have, I would say, realistically, probably a third of the people are at this stage beginning to question what is going on. So, when we reach about 40%, 45%, then I think you're going to start seeing next year, really dramatic changes in markets.
By the way, where can people buy your book?
Right now it's on Amazon.
The NASDAQ is hitting new highs. What does Socrates see ahead for the U.S. stock markets?
We're still looking for a correction back down, probably into September, October. Then we're looking at the market really still moving up, higher. But what you have to look at is that, yes, the NASDAQ's been making new highs. The Dow has been unable to even reach a buy signal on our system. The Russell 2000 peaked actually last August, which is the broader view of the market. So it's just been, we're in what we call a paradigm shift, where the old brick and mortar type industries, J.C. Penney's, Neiman Marcus, things of this nature, they're failing. And what you have is a shift to a new type of economy like Amazon, online, things of this nature. The same thing happened in the Great Depression. It was 40% of the people were employed in agriculture. Then, agricultural prices collapsed after World War I. Then you had the Dust Bowl come in the 1930s. And that's why unemployment went to like 25%. It was finished. That industry could no longer employ that amount of people. Plus the technology that came out with combustion engines, so they had tractors and things of this nature coming in. And so by the time you get to 1980, agriculture employment was down from 40% in 1900 to 3%. So this is the same thing, where it's just a paradigm shift from the old world of, shopping malls and things of this nature to more of online. And this whole nonsense of coronavirus and lockdowns and things of this nature. It's really for political purposes, but you can't have an economy run this way. It's absolutely crazy. You have almost 30% of housing, mortgages are behind. It's just insane, completely insane. So, yes, you can cure the common cold if we all stay inside. We never see anybody ever again. But, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Is that the way life should be?
So what are your thoughts on the continued lockdowns around the world?
I think you're going to start seeing a lot more civil unrest everywhere. In Serbia, they actually, it was very interesting. They attacked the parliament, throwing rocks and everything, breaking all the windows. The government called in the paratroopers, and they refused to go act against the people. When that happens, that's how a revolution becomes bloodless. I think you're going to see a lot more of that globally. These people are completely insane. This guaranteed basic income. They think we're all idiots. And, okay, fine, we'll give them a check, guaranteed income, bare subsistence, and you can stay home and watch TV. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. They don't understand how the economy functions, and it's all about power, and they think that they can just write some rule or regulation and everybody's going to comply, and it doesn't work that way. You're going to really create tremendous civil unrest, and there's definitely going to be blood in the streets in many areas.
It looks like the governor of California is locking the state down again. Will that likely cause more people to leave California?
I would say it's yes. I mean, you have 3 to 4 week waiting period from California, Illinois, New York just to get a U-Haul. And the prices are double to leave those states than they are to get back, because nobody's taking the rental, haulers and cars back to those places. So, it's been a very interesting one-sided exit. I mean, California, I don't know. I just think they've completely lost their way. I mean, why would you have sanctuary cities? You want no ID so people can vote because you just want, illegal aliens to vote, but then they don't pay taxes. I mean, it's like, who are you actually representing? I mean, I don't understand this. It's, and then they think, oh yeah, we have to be fair to everybody. Well, they should become American citizens and pay taxes like everybody else. I don't know. It's just, the logic doesn't really make sense. And it just seems to be quite, I mean, years ago when Hong Kong was being handed back to China, I actually had the mandate from the Hong Kong government to try and negotiate with Australia. They wanted to buy an island and move. And I met with, Paul Keating, who eventually, became the prime minister down there of the Labour government. And I tried negotiating, nothing. It wouldn't sell me an island. And I said, well, how about we just take the upper left-hand corner? No. Everything was no, no, no. I mean, and I said, I have a check here. I can pay off your national debt. No. And I finally just got so frustrated. I said to him, what is this, a racist issue? And he said, no. He said, the problem was they were leaving Hong Kong, so therefore they were anti-socialist. So therefore they would vote conservative, and it was a Labour government, and they felt if they did anything to allow them in, that the conservatives would win and politically they would lose. That's all. Who cares about the country? Who cares? I could have paid off the national debt. Oh no, none of those things matter. It's, what am I getting out of it? And that's unfortunately where we're at. It's, politics is making the decisions that are grossly out of proportion to the economy.
In 1981-82, high interest rates destroyed the economy and brought on a deep recession. I remember 1981, Canada's savings bonds paid 21%. Are there any comparisons between the 81-82 recession and the COVID lockdowns of this year?
I mean, yeah, you have awful, I think what's worse this time around is that at least people could work. I mean, I remember my mother going out and buying 10-year CDs paying 20% back then. This time around, they're earning nothing. And so many people are out of work, and the numbers don't really count, because a lot of people are, particularly the younger generation have been hurt dramatically. You have girls that are waitresses in restaurants and all, because they're going to college or whatever. They work part-time. They're not entitled to unemployment. So it's just quite different in that sense, and I think this is why you're seeing a lot of, they say, oh, there's a surge because of all these partying. They have nothing else to do. You've wiped out their jobs. Chances are they're not going to find a job in anything that they were going to school for to begin with. I mean, that's been a real fraud. And so what are you going to do? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, there's no real strategy or understanding of any of this stuff. And I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Asia. You have people wear masks who are sick. You quarantine the sick, not the entire society. So, I mean, to me, it's just something is seriously wrong here. The politicians, I've just listened to these people that are driving them, and you hear, oh, there's 50 more cases, you got to lock down. In Florida, there were more people that died in car crashes last year than from this virus. Do you lock the whole country down or the state down? Do you eliminate all cars because they're dangerous? I mean, it's reached a level of irrational, decision making.
Is real estate in Canada and the U.S. in trouble?
Well, I think that longer term, this is what really creates civilization, is that everybody comes together and it's beneficial for everyone. As long as that prevails, then a society booms. What happens then is the governments become very oppressive, arrogant, and all full of themselves, basically. They forget they did not create the civilization. They do not create the economy. They create no productive job whatsoever. All right? Everybody that works for the government is like hiring a maid. All right? She doesn't add to your income. All right? Fine. She's more convenient. You don't have to do the laundry or whatever. But she doesn't add to the income of your household. She draws from it. And that's what government does. So they create nothing that's valuable for export or import or whatever. So government is usually the destroyer of civilization because they end up at the point they become delusional with their own power. And this is what we're beginning to see. It's they've lost their way. And, this whole nonsense, of locking everybody down and they've destroyed so much of the economy. It's crazy. And I don't think they all quite understand, but there is a small group that are strategically doing this, and they've got the press in their pocket, and, this is really, from their perspective, a number of people, they're forcing this, climate change agenda, which didn't work any other way, so they're using this virus to do it. And they're cheering. In Britain, they shut down all the coal plants. They didn't need electricity, so for 2 months, there's been no electricity produced by coal. So, in Germany, they're trying to deliberately shut down all the car production. They've shut down airplanes. You can't fly to Europe. Europe can't come here. They've done a lot of damage. And the things that people aren't taking into consideration is what they've done to the food supply. So much cannot bring, you can't have social distancing and all this other nonsense and then expect the food to actually arrive at when it's needed. People farmers have had to destroy crops. There was one that put on YouTube, he had to kill over 30,000 chickens because he couldn't take them to the market. They shut down meat plants. It really is quite dramatic. But then you look at who's behind a lot of this stuff, and you find, you take Bill Gates, for example. He goes on TV, we should be all locked down, arguing against meat plants. One person has COVID, shut down the whole plant. Okay, what are his investments? Besides vaccines that everybody knows, he has strategic investment in absolutely everything, right down to alternative meats, energy, everything. He is profiting tremendously from this. And he stands up there and says all this stuff, and nobody investigates. I mean, if I did that without disclosing what I'm making money off of, I mean, you get, life imprisonment multiple times. But, nobody investigates him or his crews. And, I mean, you can just Google breakthrough energy, and you'll see all the people that he has in there. I mean, right down from Amazon, all of them. They're all in on this and profiting tremendously from it.
We'll have more with Martin Armstrong when This Week in Money returns.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Martin Armstrong. Martin, is there a push for Marxism around the world? And if there is, who's behind it and who's putting the money behind it?
It's a coalition. You have Gates basically has been reared from birth on this whole, Malthus idea that the world is doomed because of population. So he's always been very anti-population. You can watch his YouTube things on there, and he says, Africa is the worst in the world. And what he's done really is, his experiments with vaccines. I mean, look at where he's doing it. He's doing it in the places that he says have population problems, India and Africa. But in order to further his goal, and the whole idea of microchips and things of this nature, that is extending the IT ideas that have begun with Windows and things of this nature that, Windows can be free, but they constantly update to see what you're looking at. So they can sell, you look at search for this or that. And, I mean, I personally think I'd rather just pay for a program and it shouldn't be tracking what I'm doing. But this is their theory, and they just keep wanting to go further and further and further with it. It was Gates who was behind India canceling the currency. His wife has addressed the G20 under this theory that somehow paper money is constraining women. I mean, women would be freer with digital currency. I don't even understand the theory, but it's all to eliminate physical money, put everything in the bank so everything we do can be tracked. The socialists like this because that means they get more taxes. You can't find $10 in a bill in the parking lot and put it in your pocket. Right now you're cheating because they're entitled to 50% of it. So the Marxist agenda is pretty aggressive. One of the leaders of that side of it is a guy named Piketty, who's a French economist, and he's being celebrated by the World Economic Forum out of Davos. Davos is basically supports him, and if you look at what the agenda is, and you can look right at their website, a 400% increase in taxes. And that's a compromise because he feels that all property should belong to the state. I mean, he's really a communist, but, and his whole theory is that, it's the inequality of wealth that, is wrong. I mean, this is the same thing Marx did. So it's just the third attempt. They tried it in 1848, and they did it with the Russian revolutions in 1917, and destroyed Argentina. Argentina used to be, had a better economy than the United States. U.S. used to compete against it. They seized all the property, went after the rich, and everything collapsed. They ended up having to ration meat because Argentine beef used to be one of the renowned in the world. beginning of the 20th century. So, I mean, government's not capable of running a bubblegum machine, honestly. The Marxists don't learn. They never do. They just hate anybody that has something more than they do. And unfortunately, you have people like Klaus Schwab, who runs the World Economic Forum. They're academics. They only talk to each other. So they never walk out and speak to anybody on the street to say, oh, gee, how does the economy work? Let me see, like Adam Smith did. They're too arrogant for that. They tell us how it should work. We don't tell them how it actually works. So they end up with these crazy ideas, and they pat each other on the back because they all talk to each other, and that's it. And there's no rational understanding of anything.
Is universal basic income a symbol of Marxism?
Yes. Spain is the first in Europe to try and push this in. And you can see what they're doing. With this lockdown, Spain they've devastated their hotels, tourism. They know what they've done. And instead of being concerned, what they're doing is they say, okay, fine. We've destroyed your job. We've destroyed your business. Here's guaranteed basic income. Sit home and watch TV. It's basically really just a Marxist takeover. Not much different than really what they did with the Russian Revolution. You have the northern countries in Europe telling people don't go on vacation, stay where you are. They've basically Europe cut off all air traffic within Europe as well, but all air traffic from the United States or Canada into Europe. So you're taking Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece, which rely upon big surges in tourism, at zero. So I mean, I don't know. They realize these people, they've totally devastated them, and so they're either going to rise up in a revolution against them, and they think they can placate that by giving them minimum subsistence and say stay home and watch TV. It's not going to work.
With the arrests of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, are we likely to hear more and more about human trafficking and pedophilia, and is this part of a cycle of human behavior?
Perhaps. I mean, it's not quite pedophilia. I mean, that's pre-puberty. I question seriously what that particular thing is with them. And the main reason I do is because her father was part of what I call the club. They all get together, they were manipulating markets, trying to take over sectors or whatever, and he lost a few £100,000, and they were coming in on him, and they suddenly fell off the yacht and didn't know how to swim. One of his right-hand man happened to be Bill Browder, who's out there, says, oh, he's the number one enemy of Putin, etc. I know for a fact that they were involved in trying to manipulate the 2000 Russian elections. And, they threatened Yeltsin, and you can find September 1st, CNN actually reported the truth, that the $7 billion money laundering scheme that came to light was money stolen from the IMF, and that was really Yeltsin. And so what happened after that, they threatened Yeltsin to step down, and they tried to stick in their own puppet, a guy named Baryshnovsky, and Yeltsin realized that they were trying to actually take over the Russian economy. So that's how Putin came in. He turned to Putin. Putin said, okay, fine. He made him his heir in August that year in 1999, and Edmund Safra, Republic Bank, was murdered within a few months. Baryshnovsky fled to London. I guess he hung himself because he had remorse. He made too many billions, I guess. Another guy, Kaczynski, he fled. He at least made it to Israel. And he seized, basically all their company, which was Heritage Capital. And you have, Browder saying that he killed his lawyer, but his lawyer was actually, Naginsky was really just the accountant. And I seriously doubt that Putin would have killed him, because he would have basically turned over, all the evidence on everybody else. So the whole Maxwell thing goes deeply into the bankers. If it was just this thing of going after young girls, then fine, you're doing it to make money or something. But if you look at the client list, I mean, Bill Gates was meeting with Epstein, who was going to give him $30 million. I mean, Al Gore met him. I mean, it's just quite amazing. Clinton, I mean, all these people, the prince from England. I mean, there's something more than just money here. These are people with power. So, yes, if you had, people that just had a lot of money, hey, I'm going to expose you unless you give me this. But here we're talking about actually being able to influence countries. So you're talking about a higher level. And that's why I said it's not pedophilia. You're not talking about 7-year-old kids. This is somebody that's, 16-year-old girls versus 18, So it's illegal. So it is blackmail material. I mean, that's what I think, just because it's where it leads. I know her ties are into the bankers. So it's a question of, are they really going to go after the bankers for once? I don't know. I mean, it seems a bit stupid why to bring charges against Epstein. I think maybe it'd been a prosecutor that did and didn't understand where it led. But I knew he was going to be killed. It was as simple as that. They can't put somebody on trial who has brought in Clinton and Al Gore and all these people. You can't have a trial with all that becoming public. There was just no way he could possibly survive. Now, you got the same problem with her. So I would suspect she's going to cooperate, give names or whatever, and and she'll just plead. There will never be a trial. So the question becomes, how far do they want this information to go? Cause you can leave it with just the sex ring, but it goes much further than that.
What are you hearing about China's economy?
Like everybody else, it's declining sharply. I still think China will end up as the financial capital of the world after 2032, largely because we're destroying ourselves. But, they're going into a serious recessionary period. This is the danger that these people don't realize. I mean, war emerges only when people lose. When everybody's fat and happy, it's fine. As soon as you start losing, then that's when people get aggravated, they start pointing the finger, and they want retribution. So, I'm putting out a new book, which should be out hopefully in another 30 days, The War Cycle, which goes extensively into all of this. And it's just another part of the system. I mean, the computer's been pretty good projecting everything from 2016 would be Brexit would win, Trump would win, rising civil unrest, and just, you can see it's like a set of dominoes. It's one going after the other. What they're doing right now is undermining the entire world economy. And this is their objective. I just put out a piece called, The Great Reset, which is not a word I made up. This is them. You'll find it on YouTube. This is coming out of the World Economic Forum. They're about to come out with a book, and it's conveniently saying that, okay, fine, since the world economy has collapsed, with their help, of course, let's end fossil fuels and let's go green. And so you have, even in Germany, they're saying, we'll help companies that are green. If you're not green, basically die, please. They're doing the same thing in Spain. This is what I mean. It's a concerted effort to change the world economy against this climate change, and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You can't even produce that much electricity for everybody to have electric cars.
People from China have bought real estate businesses and politicians around the world. We hear China is starting to tax their citizens on their global income. What could this mean for real estate, businesses, and corrupt politicians around the world?
Yeah, I mean, they've had major efforts in going after capital flight from China. They were using Bitcoin. They shut down a lot of that, and people were using Bitcoin to get the money out. A lot of the loans, etc., that were being misreported, as they were, borrowing money in Hong Kong, bringing the money at lower interest rates, and just simply bringing it into China at higher interest rates. So, I mean, and people were going, they're importing things. No, they weren't importing anything. It was just money flows. So, the world economy is in serious trouble. You can't crash it like this. I mean, Singapore, the GDP fell almost 45%. This is very serious. And these academics, they think this is a great thing. They're going to be able to reconstruct the world economy green. And it's not going to work. Absolutely not going to work. And then you have them, why I say it's a really concerted effort. You then have them, stopping pipelines, trying to shut down car production. But, on top of all that, you have them buying shares in various different funds and then showing up and demanding them to divest all money out of China. Because China won't bend to their will. So what they're trying to do is deliberately hurt China through investment. They're trying to blackmail any foreign company or fund investing in Canada that they should be selling all their assets in China.
You mentioned the power of the world will move from the West to Asia in the future. What would need to be done to retain the power in the West?
I don't know. Cyclically, it's just time to move. But, in theory, perhaps you could, at least reduce it to some degree, but it would take a revolution. I mean, our politicians are so corrupt at this stage in the game. Look, this is why they hate Trump so much. And you just have to look at it this way. I mean, I've done a lot of research on different types of governments. The best I've ever seen was the government of Genoa. What it was that the Doge, or like president, rotated on an annual basis among the rich families. So what would happen would be your family would be the Doge this year. You might not get back to that position for another 30 or 40 years. So it wasn't class warfare. They ran it more like a corporation. It was Genoa against Florence and against Venice. So everybody benefited. It wasn't this Marxist, oppression type thing. The advantage of it was the fact that because the Doge was there for only 1 year, he certainly would never pass a law that would be detrimental to the economy or himself, who's going to be back on the other side the next year. This is why they hate Trump, because all the other career politicians, and they can be Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter, they have nothing. They leave office and they just have their hand out and they're taken care of by government, period. They have nothing to return to. They've never created anything. I mean, look at Obama. He was basically broke before and buy some $15 million house on the beach. Where does this money come from? The Clintons were bankrupt. Now they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And nobody ever investigates or asks. But they hate Trump because Trump is not about to do anything draconian to the economy. Because when he leaves office, he still has a company to go return to. So he's not, he's going to be much more reasonable. That's why they hate him. When Reagan came in, they didn't like him either. Because he wasn't one of them. I see this pattern constantly, and it's not just in the United States, but it's global. They want only with their own, and because it's like a little club, and that's what goes on. So, I don't see us being able to prevent this move, but I mean, in theory, if we had a revolution early enough, and you got rid of all of this career politicians and you actually set it up correctly once, more like Genoa, so that you don't have career politicians and it really is a government of the people, by the people, then maybe you got a shot. But we have republics, and republics are always go into oligarchies. There's never been a republic that hasn't been mired in corruption, because you're electing somebody to represent you. He becomes a career politician. It's not you, and he's bribed. Simple as that.
The USMCA went into effect July 1st. Is it a good deal for Canada, the US, and Mexico?
Look, I think that you're going to find it, in theory, much better. A lot of the old NAFTA, etc., when that was done, it was like pretty much pre-internet. So a lot of the new development of the economy that has developed since then, we're in this paradigm shift, would not have ever been covered under NAFTA. So, it's just largely an updated type thing, and it does have to account for everything that has changed in the economy.
Section 27 of the USMCA focuses on eliminating political corruption in all three countries. Should corrupt politicians be worried?
I doubt it. I'll put it this way. I was invited to a dinner for the IMF in Washington. It's illegal to buy dinner, because that's part of this corruption stuff. So they rented the entire National Gallery. I went there. Everybody was there. Every politician you ever saw in your life, they were there. Heads, Federal Reserve, everybody was there. You could have filet mignons, lobster tails, anything you wanted. As long as you stood, it was an hors d'oeuvre and not dinner. So there were no seats. I was holding my plate. I held the plate for Paul Volcker so he could cut his steak, and he held I just looked at him and I said, this is really a joke. And he goes, yes, I know. But you pass the law as if somebody's going to change the direction of the country because you bought them dinner. It's stupid. And then they pat each other on the back. Oh yes, this is against corruption. It has nothing to do with it. And there's always a way around it.
What are the positives and negatives you see ahead for Canada?
It depends what you call positive and negative. I do think you're going to see more of a separatist movement, not just Alberta, but maybe even BC. Largely because what we're facing here is centralized government is why communism failed. And after the Great Depression, it was FDR who seized control of the Federal Reserve. The Fed had 12 branches, and each branch was independent because they understood there's a difference in the economy. So when he seized it all and installed just a single interest rate, it's okay, fine, we're going to have World War II, but they never put anything back. So you've had the same problems in Canada, raising interest rates because there was real estate speculation in Toronto. Meanwhile, they're putting commodity producers in Alberta into bankruptcy. We used to call it the New York-Texas arbitrage. When oil was doing really great, all right, inflation was up, and New York didn't do so great. When inflation was down and you got a good deflationary mode, Texas is in bankruptcy. You have different economies, and they don't understand this. This one-size-fits-all doesn't work, and the lack of that understanding only increases the tensions between the regions. So, the separatist movement you see in Alberta, it's correct. It's like they get the short end of the stick on everything. You have people in Toronto, oh yes, there should be no, fossil fuels. We want to be part of this green and, put everybody out of business in Alberta. This is, it's arrogant. You had that girl Greta flew, interestingly, to Alberta. How does this 16-year-old girl get there ahead of the elections to try and influence? Because she's being paid. Everything's being paid by all these various people. So, she was just being used as a puppet, by Greenpeace and the rest of them, who also, you look at it, there were secret meetings in 2009 in New York City, with Bill Gates and Soros and Buffett and all of them on how to reduce the world population and to improve this green environment. This is what they're doing. So, if you look at what they're saying and just dig a little bit, you can go to NASA's site. What % of CO2 is in the atmosphere? It comes back 0.04%. That's it. You listen to them and you think the entire world's going to fry, and we're talking about such a minimal amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, but they act like it's going to completely destroy everything. It's just nuts. These masks, there are incidents now of people passing out. You can't wear a mask all the time. There was a guy that had, one of those N95 masks, and he passed out, driving and hit a tree. And they tell you can't possibly use this. They tell you not to wear a mask all the time. There's a guy on YouTube that took a CO2 measuring thing, stuck it underneath the mask. It went to like 8,000. At 5,000, you can end up, just passing out. So, it's serious stuff. And even Fauci, when he first came out, he said, his first thing was that people that are sick should wear masks. Not everybody.
Gold has broken above $1,800 an ounce. What do you see ahead for gold?
It's basically starting to align with the stock market, which is what I've been saying that it has to happen. It will still pull back from a July high probably. And then more of a breakout for the stock markets and gold will be seen next year. And the real requirement here is got nothing to do with the quantity of money and all this other kind of stuff. It's basically whether or not you trust government at all, period. And that's what we were, going into 1980, I remember it was just the attitudes at that stage in the game against, Jimmy Carter was just like he lost total confidence. And that's what was killing the dollar. So I think we're headed into a monetary crisis cycle because they're trying to push their agenda forward here, which is primarily to cancel all the currency. And I think you'll see that more in Europe first. There'll be a lag. If Trump wins the election, we'll probably have about a 2-year lag. But if you look at what the Democrats tried sticking in the stimulus package, it was to create a digital dollar. They're on this whole agenda with the Marxists over there in Europe, and they want to cancel the currency. They think then that will force everybody into the bank. You can't hoard money, and they can get whatever taxes they want. This is, their dream. They think their problems economically are not created by them. It's all us all the time. And if we all paid whatever they thought was they were entitled to, there wouldn't be a deficit. It's an absolute joke, but this is what these people actually believe. So I do think you're going to see the markets will pull back. That will be one more retest, probably going into the election period. They'll use the polls, etc., against Trump. And then after that, it really doesn't much matter I think if it's Trump wins or he loses, because it's going to be a period of the next couple of years where people are just simply going to be, we're losing confidence in government on a global scale. What they've done with these lockdowns and all this stuff, I mean, look, you can't do this. I mean, this virus is I believe was probably created by them, but, in a lab and leaked, whether it was intentional or not, but, it's going to be around for years. Do we lock down every time? Oh, there's 10 people that have it. Let's lock down the whole economy. I mean, this is insane. We have to live a normal life and learn to live with viruses like we do with the flu. Everybody knows, okay, fine, there's the flu, and yes, the elderly die. That's, what happens. My mother died at 99, and they always would say, look, it's the flu season, and that's when they go. You got to be careful with that. That was standard advice back then. So this is no different. There were some 100 people that died in my area. 70 of them were in a nursing home. So it's not a long-term solution. You lock down everybody for every virus that comes by. It's overkill, and I think it is more for political purposes, and that's going to really lose a lot of confidence, and then you're going to see the markets go. You have to understand that Europe has had negative interest rates since 2014. They have not worked. They've created money, stimulated, nothing has worked. All right. They can't raise interest rates now. They told people, oh, for retirement you save and you live off your savings. That's a joke. They can't. So what's going to happen here? They have to cancel the currency. That's their only other option. And what they're going to do with debt, and why I warn people, do not have any government debt, state, local, or federal. Get out. Because they can do anything they want. All right. Corporate debt does not. But government debt, they can do anything. And what they're going to do in Europe, because I've had questions on it already, and I know this is what they're looking at. It's called perpetual bonds. They will take all of the outstanding debt and say, okay, fine, as of tomorrow, it's a perpetual bond, which means they will pay interest every year. It has no expiration, and they don't have to pay it off. This is what Italy did when it was in trouble 2 decades ago. People had 90-day paper. They couldn't pay. They said, oh, okay, fine. We're converting it to 10-year. They can do anything they want. They got the guns and the tanks, and you can't go to court and win on anything. So I'm just warning you that all governments, that's the way they act, and just be careful. Because, they say they don't default. Yes, they just turn into a perpetual bond. The city of Detroit suspended its payments in 1937. They said they never defaulted. Yes, they resumed payments 1963. Now, do you want to wait that long to be able to even get interest? Just stick with corporate, the AAA or at least AA or something like that. I mean, just be rational with what is going on here and understand, sometimes you get these economic collapses and it's the corporations that are greedy, overextended, and they collapse. Okay? This one is different. This one is government. What we're looking at, basically, they are incapable anymore of borrowing perpetually year after year after year. They can't get institutions to buy them at these negative rates, and they can't raise rates. If they raise rates, then their own portfolios collapse, and they're worried about the economy gets worse. So what do? It's the scheme that they're planning on doing is creating a perpetual bond. It's effectively a default. They'll pay you interest at these minimal rates, and that will be it. They don't ever have to pay it off.
Silver has broken above $19. We're hearing of silver shortages. Is this silver's time to shine?
I think that silver will be better than gold. The main reason I say that is largely you can use it for smaller transactions, but you have the Marxists have all been looking at gold. They've been putting in all kinds of regulations. You can't even buy an ounce of gold in Europe without it being reported down to the government. Who's buying it? Where's it going? Etc. There used to be a big coin convention in Paris. They shut it down. And this was before all this COVID stuff. The government went in and said, okay, fine. We want you to give us a list of everybody that comes in, what they buy, or what they sell. The dealers just left. That was it. So they're trying to track everything they possibly can. And they do know that gold is a alternative. And when they're trying to cancel currency, they're worried about trying to shut down every little nook and cranny they can possibly do. So I would be concerned that they would go after more on gold rather than silver. And the same thing on the cryptocurrencies. But I think from a rational perspective, if we're looking at really on a barter deal, you're probably better off with old silver coins that the average person can look at. Oh, okay, fine, that's 1962. That's a good one. So I would think that you're going to see that premiums for silver coins versus just simply bars.
The U.S. dollar, what's your view on it? Bullish or bearish?
Bullish probably up until about 2022. Then we may see it flip the other way as concern that the U.S. will be following suit with this monetary crisis cycle. But, just keep in mind Europe is the real problem. And they don't have many options left. So they're probably going to cancel the currency and move to the perpetual bonds. That's going to send capital to the U.S. and even, into Canada to some degree and Asia. But eventually, after that happens, it's kind of like when Greece collapsed. Everybody made a lot of money on that. And then they lick their lips and say, okay, fine, who's next? Oh, Portugal. Well, yeah, and then they go after that. And, Spain's next, and Italy. This is the way capital moves. So once they draw blood in Europe, they're going to turn around and say, oh, the dollar's next. So then they'll come after the dollar. So then you'll see the dollar crack. But, there's been, it's more of capital flows and where's the money going to hide. And you have to look at this on a global scale. Where are the real problems? I know a lot of people, the dollar, it's got to crash because of the quantity of money. That's got nothing to do with it. And they're not looking at internationally. These things are far worse in other places than they are in the United States. North America is, just passive in that respect compared to Europe and what you see over in Japan. So that's what I would expect. We got a monetary crisis cycle, and we're looking at governments really on their debts being unable to pay. So this is all going to undermine currencies, confidence, and it will put, a little bit of a bounce in things like the stock market, because the smart money will say, gee, where do I go? It's like, the German hyperinflation. People that ended up with real estate or tangible assets in one way or another, they survive. And it's basically back to that again.
What do you see ahead for the Canadian dollar?
The Canadian dollar will still benefit to some degree because of the turmoil in Europe. But then when they'll start focusing on Canada, the dollar will go down. It's looking at separatist movements and things of this nature. But eventually we're looking at some sort of a complete monetary reset, I would say, as early as 2022.
We keep hearing about digital currency. Can cash survive?
No, like I said, their view is that although we've had physical money and coins or paper or whatever since the 7th century BC, suddenly, now it's a conveyor of viruses. It's just an excuse. And again, it's more of a Marxist thing that eliminate the money, and that's really what they're looking for. They think that they can get everything they ever wanted or dreamed about. If there is no physical money in any way, shape, or form, and it's all digital, then they can control the entire thing. This is what they actually do believe.
If they tried to do that, would people come up with some other kind of currency? I don't know, seashells or something?
I mean, look, there's always some sort of a black market. I mean, you look at prisons, they were, cigarettes became money. Then when they outlawed cigarettes, it became fish, packs of mackerel. There's always something that people will switch to. And it's just a question of what people will see as valuable. Or as long as they know that somebody else will take it from them. It was seashells in China. It's been cattle. It's been all sorts of different things over the years. So we have to look at it from that perspective. But what will they use? I mean, basically, you're probably going to see a rise in barter type situations. You cut my hair and I'll give you something or whatever. Maybe private tokens. The Romans, I mean, I think a classic example of that are what they call prostitute tokens. They passed a law that you couldn't pay a prostitute with, any coin that had the image of the emperor on it. Well, they all did. So what did they do? They minted private tokens. You bought the token, you gave the prostitute the token, and she could take the token and then redeem it. So legally, you didn't pay her with any coin that had the emperor on it. So we've seen this in the Great Depression. There were over 200 cities issued their own money. And there's been a lot of this type of private issue. In Germany, the same thing. There were companies that issued money. And so that was a little bit more valuable than ones that the government was printing. So it depends what the laws are. But you could definitely see like Alberta issuing its own money, things of this nature, and they'll say it's backed by oil or whatever. So I mean, I would expect a multitude of different types of things to emerge. Particularly you're looking at after 2022.
Are we likely heading for a recession or a depression?
We're definitely heading towards a very serious recession. Does it go to a complete depression yet? It's hard to say. But what they are doing is very serious to the entire situation. They're deliberately trying to crash the economy to reset it in the way they think it should work. But in the process, what I'm more concerned about is that you do have significant reduction in food supply. And so I strongly advise your listeners, buy a bunch of canned foods and stick them in the garage. Because you're going to see much more problems with food shortages, particularly over the next 2 years. And that's going to be more of a serious situation, I think, because they really have wiped out farmers. They've wiped out the supply chain. I mean, we saw, shortages there for toilet paper, which I thought was interesting because there were shortages like that back in going into 1980 as well. So it's interesting, but I definitely would say that we're going to see at least a very, very significant recession. It's going to take at least 2 years is the minimum to make any kind of a transition where people are losing jobs from one area and to find employment in another. And a lot of them can't make that transition. The farmers really ended up becoming hobos and things of that nature because a lot of them couldn't make it to skilled labor. I mean, I had a friend who was a pilot during the Korean War and stuff, and he said the same thing. He said when pilots were flying props, a lot of them couldn't make the transition to a jet because things were happening a lot faster. They weren't used to it. So these types of transitions are not easy, and to think that they can actually just crash the economy, eliminate fossil fuels, and start everything green is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. They don't realize what they're doing to people, and their pensions. I mean, they're wiping out a lot, an awful lot, and you're going to see, a lot more protests, I think, over the next 2 years.
Do you think President Trump will win all three houses in November?
I don't know about that. I haven't looked at the yet. I haven't run the models on the Senate and the House. I mean, what I would say is this: ideally, despite all the polls, he should win. But this is going to be the most contested, the most corrupt election perhaps in history, and we're going to see an awful lot of violence. Because I don't think it matters who wins. The other side is just simply not going to accept it.
Do you think Joe Biden will still be the Democrat nominee in November?
I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. I mean, there are the diehards that really believe that Hillary will be drafted at the last minute. Biden, I think, does have dementia. That's why they're kind of keeping him in the basement. He comes, I mean, he may have been qualified 20 years ago, but I don't think he's qualified to certainly be president of the United States at this stage in the game. I mean, stands up and says, 120 million people died from COVID, I mean, can you imagine him in some sort of negotiation with China? I mean, or even, how is he going to debate Trump? Is it going to be on just Saturday Night Live? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that, I think Trump is being kind, calling him Sleepy Joe. But, I think it's much worse than that. But the word is that they're trying to keep him under wraps at this stage in the game, and, I don't know, maybe he slips and falls or something happens and then they get to draft Hillary. That's, a lot of Democrats that I know, they think that only Hillary can beat Trump.
Following the election, are we likely to see unrest verging on civil war in Democrat cities and states?
You're definitely going to see a rise in violence. There's no question about that. And it doesn't matter who wins. It might be worse if the Democrats won. I mean, because then you're going to really try and push socialism, raising taxes. I mean, I've spoken to some, and their agenda is to raise taxes back to 70% again. This is not going to fly well. I mean, you're looking at a lot of jobs being lost and businesses being destroyed, and they just seem to be so callous about it and think it's no big deal.
Well, here there was a trend to move to the big cities, then to the burbs, and now to small towns. Has Socrates been following this trend?
Yes, I mean, it's been a cyclical trend as a civilization is rising. Everybody moves to the urban centers. So Rome became the first city that ever reached 1 million population. All right. Then government peaks, starts turning against the people, becoming aggressive in taxation, etc. It fell from a population of 1 million to 15,000. People just walked away from the houses and everything else. It took London until I think it was George III or Victoria when it finally came up to London reached 1 million. I mean, it was the first city to do that after Rome. So I mean, you have a cycle where everybody goes to the urban center, particularly the youth. You saw it in China. The youth were leaving their parents and to make their name for themselves in the big cities. And then the big city becomes aggressive taxation, etc., and then they start to move. And so it's a cycle that's always been going on back and forth, and the Romans called them, they moved to suburbium. We call it suburbia today. But this is really what happens. This virus is contributing to it. A lot of people, or I get emails from people I know all the time up north, gee, I should have moved to Florida with you 4 years ago. And they're just buying RVs, hoping they can rent their houses out or sell them if somebody will buy them. In certain areas, you can't even sell them. So, I mean, I would say that definitely as the viruses and all this nonsense continues, you want to be more into the suburban area than you do in cities.
We'll have more with Martin Armstrong when This Week in Money returns.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com. This Week in Money is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Martin Armstrong. Martin, going forward, do you think Canada will be a better place to live than the U.S.?
Hard to say. I think both Canada and U.S. will eventually will break up. In the U.S., it will probably be more of the South versus the North. But you'll have certainly the Midwest against the West, California. It's hard to say as a country. I don't think countries are going to last, honestly. I think we are definitely looking at, the more the economics come to play in here, and centralized governments are just failures. So you're definitely going to see more of a splits and breakup.
Could you see the country of Cascadia, California, Oregon, Washington State, and BC?
Yeah, I mean, I do think you're looking at breaking up. California is, like I say, it's almost on another planet. And, there's not much you're going to be able to do. The philosophy, I say, it's going to take a revolution to get rid of these career politicians. But without that, I mean, I think you're just going to have to see, if you don't agree with what's taking place there, you're just going to have to leave.
What is Socrates focused on?
Mostly the international capital flows at this stage in the game going into the monetary crisis cycle. I mean, we can look at how the politically correct things are playing out in the press. I won't mention the paper, but we had one of them from overseas wanted to write an article on how Socrates forecast the virus far more accurately than anybody in all these universities, etc. They wrote the article, they showed it to me, the editors killed it. Socrates did was basically said that SARS and Mercer, etc., how long does it last? We put out a forecast, it was on the blog, that it would peak in April. And where they were saying, oh, this is going to last for 18 months. No virus has ever done that. So all we do is put in, look, this is what this virus did, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just standard timing. And so it's not opinion. It's not my opinion. I'm not more brilliant than some academic or something. This is it. This is the plain fact. When you get these other people standing up with these, crazy forecasts, it's just political opinions. That's it. There's no substance. Where's your evidence? They just stand up, oh, it's going to last for 18 months or whatever, and they don't say how, why, and don't even address the fact that no virus has ever done that.
Why are there so many stupid people?
I would say, if you want to read a book, it's by Stanley Milgram, Obedience to Authority. Very interesting study. It was, the excuse was that why did the Germans just simply kill all the Jews? And the excuse was, oh, well, they're German, they're different than everybody else. So Stanley Milgram set up experiments, and he conducted them in many different countries. He took people off the street, and he had an actor in a room, connected wires to him, told them that every time here's the questions, every time he answers something wrong, you have to give him an electric shock. But don't go too far past this red line, you might kill him, but you have to increase every time. And the actor was in there screaming, please, I can't take it anymore, and they would still do it. And he calls it obedience to authority. That as long as some authority tells you to do something, the vast majority of the people do it. So perhaps it's just human nature, but it's a very interesting study, and he would even do things like take one person, put him on a sidewalk, just staring up in the air, pointing. People would walk by, they would thought he was nuts. Put 5 people there, all of a sudden everybody stops, and they're all out there looking, and a crowd forms. There's still nothing there, but 5 people looking up, oh, there must be something. One person, he's crazy. So it's an interesting study, but it's called, the obedience to authority. That simply because they tell you, that's what they were, the Germans were saying in Nuremberg. I was only following orders. And there's a lot of truth to that.
How can people find out more about your new book and Armstrong Economics?
Well, our site is armstrongeconomics.com. You don't have to register or anything. We try to keep it open for everybody. And the book is on Amazon. We have another book that should be out probably by August sometime, which will be The Cycle of War, which is going into the whole 9 yards of what's going on with this consortium and who's behind it, from Gates and the World Economic Forum, etc. But, we're trying to dig up everything we possibly can and expose who's behind it and for what reason. So, I don't want to see my family, have to go through this. Fortunately, I get to leave. All right. I don't think I'll be around after 2032, but, so I have an escape clause, but not everybody else does. I hate to see what's going to be left, behind for my family. I mean, they're never going to know the freedom that I had growing up. Things are changing.
Martin, how did we ever survive? We didn't have bicycle helmets. We didn't have seat belts. and all.
I don't know. I mean, even, statins to reduce cholesterol and things. I mean, they didn't have any of that stuff, and people still lived into their 90s. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's the research that they put out is mostly propaganda. I mean, I've said before, which really kind of taught me about government and how corrupt it became. I mean, when they were forming the G5 back in 1985, I was invited, and I thought, wow, I guess I made it, one of the 35 people in the world. Then you get there and you realize it's all a joke. They go, oh, gee, how do we save the world? Oh, thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Your 15 minutes is up. Next. And then they stand up and they created the G5 and they say, we relied upon all these experts, and I can tell you not a single one ever advocated anything that they did. It's a dog and pony show. So I got kind of aggravated at it, and I sent off a letter to the White House, and they were forced to respond to me. But the point is, then what they said to me, no, you'll never be called again. You went out of committee, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't really care. I said, I'm not interested in this kind of dog and pony show that you people are putting on. They go, oh, well, every bill that passes, we need an economic study. You could have been making $5 million a year. They tell me what the study is and what it has to say. Here, please write it. This is how these studies are done. They tell you what you need to say, and here it is. they're going to pass Obamacare. Yes, we need a study that says we're going to save $1 trillion. Okay, fine. I make up a study. It's all total nonsense. Obamacare is going to save $1 trillion. Oh, we have an economic study on it. Because the guys paid for it. You look at all these studies on this virus. Bill Gates has paid every one of them. I was given the code of the Imperial College. I was asked to review it. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. It's something like written from the 1970s that I would equate to Sim City for a kid's game. It failed. 3 million people were going to die. Yeah, right. Okay. Oh, well, they didn't die because we locked down. No, the nonsense that they used for forecasting was a joke. Nobody would forecast, and you wouldn't have anybody on your show if I said, oh, gee, the stock market went up 500 points last year and the year before, so therefore it's going to go up 500 points every year for the next 35 years. Oh, and, this is the way they put out these forecasts for global warming, viruses, whatever. They assume whatever trend is in motion, they extrapolate it out. We're all going to fry and die. Yeah, okay, fine. And nobody does analysis that way. Nobody in the financial industry, they'd be laughed off of every TV show if they were ever to say something like that. But this is how they forecast all this stuff. And as I said, when a major newspaper wanted to write an article exposing this very thing, all right, it was canceled. Editors wouldn't let it publish. Oh, it's challenging what the WHO is saying and everybody. We can't do that. We have to make sure everybody is terrorized and hiding in their corner of their house. It's a joke, a real complete joke, but I think it's going to backfire on them, and you're going to see blood in the streets because people are realizing this is nonsense. I mean, I personally went to the doctor. I was tested for COVID 5 times in 1 month. Getting a regular blood work. Oh, you tested me for COVID too? Well, yeah, it's kind of standard now. All right. And then when I said I've been tested 5 times, what they actually said to me, oh yeah, but that doesn't matter. I said, why? Because the tests are all bogus. They don't really work. And I had another friend who signed up to get tested, went down there. The line was so long, he turned around and left. Then he gets an email saying, oh, you tested positive. It's just, you can't even make up this stuff.
Martin, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Let's hope it gets a little bit better in a few more months.
My guest has been Martin Armstrong, founder of Armstrong Economics, online at armstrongeconomics.com. He was speaking to us from Florida. And that wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Martin Armstrong, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions for Martin or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Now stand by for a company showcase update from American Manganese President Larry Reaugh. I'm Jim Goddard. We'll be back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on HowStreet.com.
I'm Jim Goddard. I'm speaking with Larry Reaugh, CEO and President of American Manganese. Larry, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jim.
Larry, what's happening with the pilot plant?
Well, it's sitting there. We had some investors out looking at it yesterday, but we're still waiting for a part, and that's as aggravating to me as it is to everybody else. But you have to remember that this pilot plant is maximizing the pilot plant for the amount of throughput it can have, and that is going to change the design of what we're doing. It'll change the costs upwards slightly, but it'll bring the OPED back. And that leads me into another area, and not the OPED, I should say the OPEX, and that is the second. A lot of articles out there on getting rid of cobalt in lithium-ion batteries, and to reduce costs without sacrificing performance. Well, if they can do that, more power to them. How does that affect us? Well, the work that we're doing right now will certainly eliminate a lot of that effect because cobalt is one of the more precious metals that we can recycle. But the price of nickel is about $13 a kilogram, and we're still up around $8 or $9 on lithium, and that's enough to carry the day. So when we're working away at on the pilot plant to maximize performance, it's bringing down the operating costs, and it's that's going to certainly stand us good, and I don't see any problems for the company moving forward because we do get up to 100% recoveries and 100% purities, and there's still lots of value in that battery. So it will certainly affect deals that we may be making in the future here. We're talking those all the time, because now the pie is going to be a little smaller, and we have to make sure we protect the shareholders' interest by maximizing our profits and being fair to any oncoming financier or maybe an off-taker or one of those types of deals that will be made, and we're definitely talking along those lines. So I can see that you'll have to sharpen your pencil, and I still see us as being in the lead when it comes to recoveries and circular economy and what we're doing. And it leads into all kinds of things like you should have a lot more ease of permits when you have a circular economy and you're not putting stuff back into the environment. That will help the company along. I'm a little tired today. I was on a conference call at 6 o'clock this morning, and so that, is a bit wearing. It's only 6 hours ago, but it still seems like it's been a long day. Now, we talk about getting rid of the cobalt in a lithium-ion battery. I'm not sure that they will actually be able to do that, but certainly they're trying to bring down the costs of the EV cars, and one of the ways they can do that is to start to recycle these batteries. 25% of the battery to date is actually the cathode materials, so you want to get those back. You don't want to, be selling them to a scrapper who ends up putting them to a smelter, and you're losing all that value in slag, and not only that, but you're creating another hazard. So, we feel pretty good about that. We've had a lot of conference calls this week, and all of them have just been excellent. And we continue to go along that line. So, looking at the EV car industry, sales are dropping. Certainly, Tesla has been a stellar performer in this market, and especially now that they got their Chinese factory going. So, a lot of companies, though, in China are starting to feel the pressure. Battery makers, EV car manufacturers, they've got sales have dropped off, and nobody wants to finance them. They have hundreds of EV car manufacturers in China, and this is going to be a weeding out process where the strong will survive, and the other ones will go the way of the dodo bird. But the fact of the matter is, that might be a healthy cleansing for the EV car manufacturing business. And, we just keep going onward and upward, and we're hoping that we will eventually be able to secure the funding and secure the work that we're doing to redesign the plant and move on to building the plant. And we have interest in that regard where we never did have a lot of interest in it. And so, that's moving ahead. So other than that, there's not a lot that I can say except that we did do, as of this morning, we had 88,600 reviews on our recent Manganese OPED, which is a record breaker. Our previous one was the first one we did at 82,000 views. So we're getting close to 250,000 views on all four OPEDs. I can see that that's reflected in the amount of interest we're getting from all over the world on what we're doing. So we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving ahead. And I've also included a couple of attachments on to do with the cobalt situation and batteries, and to do with what's happening in China on EV sales. But importantly, Save Canadian Mining put out a video, and we've attached that, and we've also attached a dated. It is about 20 years old, but it talks about the boiler rooms whereby the predator traders hire shills to go on the billboards and talk up the stock and then turn against it, and it's an interesting read. That's all I can tell you. This is we know that's going on, and it used to be when you heard the word boiler room, it was to do with pumping a stock, but now it's got more to do with dumping a stock, and so it's a good read. Go ahead and read it, and I think it could be an eye opener for some people.
Larry, for people new to American Manganese, what's the company all about?
We're a critical metals company that developed a process for treating low grades of manganese, which you're going to be reading more about in the future, and we patented that in 2012. 2015, it was recognized that this particular process could work on cathode materials and lithium-ion batteries and the metals involved. And so in 2016, we did a proof of concept, and sure enough, we could do that. But it's been a long, expensive road. We've raised about $9 million for this project, and, it just costs money. It's as simple as that. R&D is trial and error, based on good theories, and, but you still have to go through all this trial and error, and, maximizing the plant is part of that, and, bringing the costs down is part of that. We're always cognizant of, the fact that chemistries change, but we want to be in the game for the next few decades. So, we want to be up to date on what we're moving ahead with, and go on from there. We're traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol AMY. We're traded in the U.S. under the symbol AMYZF. We're traded in Frankfurt under the symbol 2AM. You can do a lot of due diligence on our company at our website, AmericanManganeseInc.com. You can request information by email to LREAUGH@AMYMN.com, or you can phone us at 778-574-4444.
Larry, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Larry Reaugh, CEO and President of American Manganese. I'm Jim Goddard. Our conversation took place on July 17th.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.